Welcome to the Writer's Game Podcast, where we help you magnify your voice and monetize your message. And now, let's get into the show.
Welcome to another episode of the Writer's Game Podcast, where we help you magnify your voice and monetize your message. I'm your host, Kyle King, and we are back on another lesson. We have somebody super special in the building, Kiana Williams, the author of Ready to Mingle, certified life coach, real estate master, and somebody super, super close to me, y'all, truly. Kiana, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I am blacktastic, truly. I feel like, not really, how I feel is joyful and grateful. And I've been rereading your book, and I'm super excited for our listeners to learn so much about what you're doing. And I guess the first question that I have for you is, what inspired the book that you wrote, Ready to Mingle?
That's a great question. So there were a few things. Firstly, I wrote Ready to Mingle in a time where I was very unhappy, just generally. I was a teacher, a fifth grade math and science teacher. I was not feeling appreciated or valued in my place of work. And I was, how honest can I be?
I mean, you could be as honest as possible.
I guess if it's too honest, we can always just never air this episode. So I was also dissatisfied with my relationship at the time because I felt like there was a lot of baggage that was hindering our potential. So Ready to Mingle was a direct response to all of because have you ever been in a situation where you want to communicate something to someone, but you know that if you tell them, they won't hear it?
Definitely. It's interesting because I had a friend call me the other day, shout out to my boy Dante, about a situation that he got into with somebody close to him. And it was a challenging situation because he had so much to say, but he felt like he couldn't communicate it to that person because they're not in the season to receive the information, even if I deliver it to the best of my ability and, respectfully, with tact, and, from the heart, with grace, all of these different things. That person is not in the season of maturity to be able to receive what I'm trying to deliver to them. So I definitely understand what you're saying. And I know there's somebody listening right now that is probably in that position. And for you, there was two different options. Number one is to walk away and move in a different direction. Number two is to write this book that is now inspiring so many people. What led you to choose option number two?
I'm going to be honest. Ready to Mingle was my last ditch effort. That was it. It was like, I'm going to try this. And I had made up in my mind that if this book is read and all the activities are followed, and then it still doesn't click, I have no other option but to walk away.
And I guess speaking to somebody right now that is on that last straw, is going through a challenging relationship that where baggage is hindering the overall potential. Speaking to that young lady or even that young man that is dealing with things that they necessarily don't deserve. What do you say to that person?
So I think first you have to figure out, is it worth it? And we were having a conversation about this the other day. Shout out to Crystal, who came up with what were the three? It was like, if it doesn't, what? Yeah,
if it doesn't nurture you, expand you, and compensate you, then there's no need to give it attention.
And so that's what I think we can all kind of point to a similar set of criteria that would make something worth it to us. And so I think that's the first step is is this situation worth it? And I think the easy way, if you don't want to go that route, the easiest way is to do a pros and cons. Because if we're looking at it from a scale perspective, do you have more positive attributes in this person or in this relationship than you have negative? And if they're equal, that's probably not even something that's worth it, to be honest. I feel like the good has to outweigh the bad. And I'm not talking about potential. I'm talking about reality. Like, what is the reality of the situation? Is that more positive than negative? And then is that worth it? And then I think, oh, go ahead.
No. I want you to finish, because my follow-up question is, when you talk about reality, why are so many people stuck in this idea phase and potential phase instead of really operating in the present reality that they're currently facing?
I'm going to be honest, if I'm speaking even from my own personal experience, I think that what we put up with is a reflection of what we believe that we deserve. So I think we can say like, oh, but I see potential, I see this. Just because somebody has the propensity to be better does not mean that they'll ever reach that. That's the first thing. And then secondly, by you being a crutch, by you being, there's a difference between having grace and being a crutch. And so if you're constantly in a space where you're like, oh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, and having to keep reiterating the same things over and over again, that person is never going to reach their potential. Even if they were able to reach whatever that potential was that you saw, by you constantly not holding them accountable, being so forgiving and just like brushing everything under the rug, not communicating when you have an issue, you're not even giving them an opportunity to reach their potential.
I think that's such a powerful statement. I think so many people, and I've been in this space as well, you know, in a professional realm and in a personal realm, where you get so locked in on potential that you then in turn become a crutch, not even knowing that you're the reason that you're experiencing the pain and the disappointment that you currently feel, because you've created an environment that is not conducive for that person to hold themselves accountable and be responsible for their actions and the overall outcomes within the relationship. When you think about this story, when you think about being ready to mingle, I want you to define, what does it mean to be ready to mingle?
So when you're ready to mingle, that just really means that you're in a space where you're able to accept other people into your life. And what that means is, I don't think we ever completely unpack our baggage. I think that's a journey. I think as you move through and meet new people and have new experiences, you're always going to be accumulating a little bit of baggage, I think the difference is having the level of self-awareness to, one, understand what baggage you're carrying, and then two, constantly like evaluating what things no longer serve you, and then what things need to be added to your baggage. Because I think when we think about baggage, it's always like unpacking. I need to unpack, I need to get stuff out. But there's some stuff that some people are lacking that you need in your luggage to carry along with you, which can be patience, compassion, understanding. It could be all kinds of things that maybe you need to add to your luggage as well. So in being ready to mingle, it's just understanding what's in your baggage and then being responsible so that you're not giving other people parts of your baggage for them to carry.
When you think about baggage, why do you believe people have put such a negative connotation to it?
I think a lack of self-awareness. I think that we have to acknowledge that the same way we have negative experiences that have harmed us, have made us turn cold and done all these things to us, there are a lot of negative experiences in our lives that have also had very positive outcomes as well. And so I think that we can be kind of hyper-focused on this victim thing where it's like, we want sympathy, we want excuses for our behavior. We don't want to just say like, that was the way that I internalized that situation, not necessarily that that was the only option that I had. And so I think it kind of goes along with that whole baggage thing, where some baggage is good. There are some, you know, there may be somebody who you no longer talk to anymore, but you're carrying a part of their baggage and it might not even be a bad thing.
Could you give me an example of something that you're currently holding on to that potentially is negative baggage that is affecting a relationship that you may be a part of?
So I guess one thing would be, and we kind of had this conversation the other day, I don't like asking people for things. And I think part of that comes from like my mom, where I would say the whole me not really trusting people is my mom. My dad is very trusting, a lot like you, like all has a lot, like, is just very friendly and like, letting people in and just nice. I would say like my mom is more of the like very cautionary, like, we don't really know that person. And then like in general, I think her belief is that your family is going to be mainly who you can trust. You can't really count on other people. So I would definitely say that's one thing that it impacts me in a lot of ways. I don't think they're all negative though. That's why I don't really care to change it. And I think that's another thing that people are not honest about. A lot of us, I would say probably near all of us, have something that is not necessarily positive, like a slightly negative characteristic that we're not even interested in changing. And that's okay.
I think the problem is that people aren't self-aware enough, nor are they communicative with the persons that they're dealing with, whether it's in an intimate relationship or just a regular relationship, right? And I think that is the premise of the whole podcast here, to magnify your voice. When you think about what your book has done for you in regards to your ability to pull from the book content, lessons, material, your ability to speak on different platforms from some of the different things that you've communicated, or even your book can help guide you in conversation with different individuals, whether it's family, friends, or intimate relationships. How has your story, how has your book, how has what you've developed helped magnify the inner voice within you?
So first, to be honest, writing the book helped me unpack a lot of stuff because the first iteration of the book, as you saw, it wasn't a lot of like personal information about me. And then the feedback was, well, the best parts of the book are the parts about you. And so I'm like, okay. And so then it was like back to the drawing board for 6 months to a year or something on adding pieces and like adding stories and pulling. And then when you pull stuff out, because I am self-aware, okay, well, how does this make me feel and why? So then it's like, okay, well, let's deal with that. Even to the point where you saw it, I took a trip back to my college to figure out, was there pieces from that time period that I had like just kind of put off into the closet and hadn't dealt with, because I took it very seriously that if I'm asking these people, these readers of mine to do this self-work, that I did the self-work myself. And I think that because I was very authentic, one, in the subject matter, because this is the life that I really live, and then two, in actually doing the work, it makes it very easy for me to be able to pull from those things and use them in regular conversation, because I didn't just write that stuff. I believe it. Like, that's how I live.
Could you talk to somebody right now that is thinking about writing their book, that has words on paper, or is potentially getting ready to publish their book, that either A, doesn't believe in the content, B, doesn't live the life, or C, there's a disconnect between the lifestyle and the actual brand in which they have developed this book?
So I don't know if you're going to like what I'm going to say, because I don't know what you would say to this person, but I am very big on authenticity and on just things aligning, because I think it's easier to live a life that is a reflection of your reality. So what I would say is you need to wait, like just wait for a minute. And you need to figure out how you can recalibrate, because what you don't want is to pull up to, and you've seen this, you pull up to a podcast and somebody starts asking you questions, and then you're stuttering, you don't really know, like your answers are not really answering the question. People can tell when you're not being authentic.
They can definitely see through bullshit.
They could tell when you wrote a book and you're not an expert, that you just went and did a whole bunch of research. I didn't have to do a bunch of research to write the stuff that I wrote in my book. And I can pull out quotes all day long because it's real stuff that I wrote. Like, it's not like I don't want to throw shade. This is not shade. This is just a real example. Like, one of your authors was talking about, like, they had used like an analogy from somebody else's book.
Mm.
And they were asking, like, is that okay? Like in copyright, like legally, is that okay? My thought when the question came up was, why don't you just make your own analogy? Like use that as inspiration and just make your own analogy. Like if this is your field, this is your lane, it's nothing for me to talk about this stuff. And if you can't do that, that might not be what you should be talking about, because imagine being asked to come on stage and talk to 1,000 people about this topic in a panel or something like that. And you get a question and all you can pull is from other people's stuff, but you're an author.
All right, I'm gonna put you to the test really quickly. Anybody listening right now, I really believe that she can succeed in this test and she'll pass with flying colors. So you talk about the importance of being an expert. And if there's certain analogies, given your example, if there's certain analogies that someone would want to use on their subject matter, instead of pulling from other areas, you should be able to essentially come up with different analogies to be able to tell the story. So I want you to give me, we're going to do a really quick rapid fire exercise. So I say a word and you create a short story to describe that analogy and to be able to deliver a point. Is that all right?
So I'm trying to basically explain, I'm assuming this is going to be relevant to my topics, and then I'm explaining it like a, is it a story, like a fictional story, or just I'm explaining it? You
create an analogy based upon the word that I said so that you could teach the audience.
Okay.
All right, so we'll start easy. Triggers.
So if you've ever been in a drive-through and someone got your order wrong, if your response was to curse them out, 1, you are not ready to mingle, but 2, you were triggered.
Okay. Let's go baggage.
So if you, here's a good one. Have you ever been about to take a trip somewhere and then you get to the airport and you realize that your bag is too heavy to fly with you? You've packed too much stuff away. It's important to use our lives and our experiences in the same way that you would be packing your baggage so that you could take a trip somewhere. You need to be really evaluating which things need to be in that luggage taken with you on your destination. And you want to be intentional, because if you have too much stuff packed away, you're not going to make it to your destination on time.
That's good. That's good. Self-awareness.
So self-awareness, if I ask you, how are you feeling right now? And if you say good, I'm going to say good is not an emotion. How do you feel? Self-awareness is the ability for you to be able to tell me how you feel at any given point. If something is bothering you, for you to be able to say exactly what's bothering you and be able to point to the root of why it's bothering you.
What is the last negative emotion that you felt?
The last negative emotion? Probably, I don't really think this is necessarily negative though.
Or a feeling that was undesirable.
I've been feeling a lot of feelings that I wouldn't necessarily say that they were negative, but my birthday is tomorrow. So I think naturally, as you're getting older, you start to reevaluate what's going on. And I would say it made me uncomfortable. And I think that can be seen as a negative emotion, where it's like trying to make sure that I'm in alignment, you know, as I'm moving into a new year of life, and just reminiscing on things that are no longer a part of this season, and then figuring out what the next season is, and just like trying to exist in between. I don't know if anybody can relate to that.
No, definitely. You know, when you're going through this transformational period and you see the person that you want to become, and you see all of the work that you're currently doing in this current moment, but you don't know what those next steps look like to be able to get to that person, or to get to the thing that you want to be able to create. It's kind of like when you're playing basketball. You know, you're training every single day, or any sport, you're training every day, and you know what it takes to being able to get to that playoff or championship game, because you've seen it before, whether it's on TV or whether it's actually you've won some type of game throughout your life. But to get to new heights, you have to have certain strategies that can be able to enhance your activity on a daily basis. When you think about that statement right there, what are 3 strategies that you can give somebody to help them get back into alignment?
Well, the first strategy, can I say this, is to buy my book and like do it.
Yeah.
Like, do it. Number one. Number two, and I say this a lot, but I think it's very important, is to utilize as much as necessary, do nothing days and not feel guilty when you're doing nothing. That's not number two. And if you don't know what a do nothing day is, it's literally a day where the goal is to just get right. Like there is no pressure to cook, to do work, to read, to do anything other than get yourself back on track. That's number two. And then I would say number three is pruning. That's the step, pruning. And what that is pruning your beliefs, pruning the people around you, pruning some of the distractions. I know you've been talking a lot about distractions lately. And just really identifying again, what things are no longer serving you in the season that you're in, because what you'll find is a lot of times we take on the desires of other people. We take on characteristics of other people. And some of what we're feeling guilty about is because we're trying to execute on someone else's desires. And so I think the quicker that you can do that, you're able to then get in alignment with what your desires are. And then you find fulfillment because now you're going after those things.
What are some of your desires? You know, you've written this book. Mm-hmm. You went through this season of transformation. You've gotten on the other side. You recently bought a house. Congratulations. And you're doing such amazing things that you're continuing to evolve into the woman that you're destined to become. So, but what do you think that your desires are in this season? And if you achieve those desires, or if you get to those desires, what does that look like in regards to your life?
So my major desire in this season, this year, is for people to see God through me. That is my desire. That is my major goal. And right now that is manifesting itself in my podcast, the Baggage Check podcast. Interestingly, I would say as an adult, the very first direction that I was given from God was to write Ready to Mingle. And I did that, and my expectations were different than what the reality became in terms of success for that book. Success for the book really was finishing the book. And we talk about that all the time. Like, your goal doesn't have to be to become a New York Times bestseller or to sell $100,000 worth of copies. Sometimes finishing the book is enough. So that's one for whoever needs to hear that. I don't know who that was. Somebody needed to hear that. But two, when the outcomes were not what I hoped they would be, it made me then feel like, okay, well, now what? And it took over a year for me to get the next direction. My mom always told me, though, once you hear something from God, until you hear something else, just stay consistent. Just like stay on track, stay on course, and don't do anything that's going to like derail you from what you're supposed to be doing, but just kind of stay the course and listen for him to speak again. And he did that. And the podcast was the next step. I can see that there is a conference coming, and it's a women's conference. I can see it down the pipeline next year. Between now and next year, I know that there are a whole host of things that happen in between to make those happen, and make it make sense. I can't fully see it, but I see it. So that's my focus right now. That's what I desire right now. And we were having a conversation at the beginning of this year, still the beginning of this year, but at the beginning of this year, a couple weeks ago. And I was telling you that I'm in an interesting season because I'm now at a place where I only desire what God wants for me. I have no desires for myself that are not in alignment with what he wants for me. And that is a strange place to be when you're used to like having all these goals and like, I can do this and I have this talent and this skill and I want to write a song and I want to do this and I want to do that. And it's like, well, yeah, you can do that. But like, if it's not going to get me closer to where he has shown me, like this conference and all these things, and me being this woman that can lead these people like this, me writing a song or doing a cooking video, that's not gonna get me to that place. And if I chase after that, it's gonna take me longer to get where he has ordained me to be. So I have no interest in that.
That really spoke to me.
Mm.
It really did, because I think hopefully somebody on here has really listened to that last statement. Is you may have a lot of gifts. You may have a lot of things that you're passionate about. You may have a lot of things that you want to do. You may have a lot of things that you're currently successful in doing. But until you operate, I heard something as well. I read something earlier today. Shout out to Bob Buford in the book Halftime. And it talked about in the book that there's two types of unhappiness. There's the type when you don't get what you want. And then there's the type where you do get what you want. Mm. And I know somebody on here is like, what? I got what I want. Why would I be unhappy? Because you got it and you realize that there was still a gap and there was still that feeling of something missing, because that's not what God wanted for you.
Yep.
Kind of like you finally get that girl that you wanted, but then you recognize that there's things that God tried to protect you from. You finally got that house that you wanted, but you recognize that there was something going on in the foundation, or it was out of your price range. So now you have more house than you have budget. Mm-hmm. Finally got that business opportunity, but now it took you away from the lifestyle that you wanted to be able to live as a father, as a mother, as a husband, or as a wife. So you finally get it, the thing that we desire, the thing that we want. But when we're not operating through what God wants for us, when we're not operating through the place that God needs us to be, we end up in disaster. We end up in calamity. We end up in chaos. And I love what you said about do nothing days. A lot of times when we begin to create silence, when we begin to minimize our distractions, when we begin to minimize our people in our lives, or the things that are in our circle, or the things that are getting our attention, then we're able to allow God to have our attention. And now it allows us to be able to move forward. When you think about one thing that would really be able to help you move forward in this season, what would that be?
Does it need to be a person? It could be anything. I am consistently asking God to change my appetite. And when I say that, I want it to continue to evolve and change, and not just my appetite for food. I want my appetite for friends to continue to evolve, my appetite for music to continue to change, my appetite for books to continue to change. Like, I know for anybody that grew up going to church, there was a time when as a child, I hated having to go to church, because I'm like, it is so boring. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. Like, you in the pew, I'm like taking a nap, like while the sermon is going on. And it's just like, like I liked the praise and worship part, but then when he started preaching, like it just went over my head. I wasn't ready for it. So, but now I watch sermons in my living room on YouTube, on the TV. Like, I seek them out because my appetite has changed. I think when you think about, I can think about some of the like guys that I was attracted to in high school or even in college. They would not get the time of day today. And that's not saying like any shade on them. They're not compatible for who I am and what my appetite is right now. And it's not just, oh, I want, like, you know how people always say like, no, but the nice guy always finishes last or whatever. No, there is a woman who the nice guy is her appetite. However, that comes at a certain place in life where your appetite has evolved, and now it is for things that are in alignment with what God would have you or want you to have. So I think for anybody who is in a space where you're wanting to move forward, pray for one, discernment, but two, pray that your appetite continues to change and it continues to be in alignment with what God would have you to have. Because in building those types of kingdom relationships, it's going to push you closer to purpose and closer to your calling.
What do you think that your calling is? Or have you gotten to that point where it's really clear enough that you can see, that you can hold, and that you can feel it?
I believe that I don't think God has shown me exactly what it is, because I think that it would scare me too much. And that's not me being arrogant or anything of that nature, but I think that that's the truth. I think he's shown me what I can comfortably chase after right now, which is a successful podcast that people listen to and a conference. The number of the conference, because I see 1,000 people at the conference, the number scares me a little bit, but it's not scary enough for me not to seek after it. I think that my calling, and I know that God does this a lot. And if you really study scripture, there are a lot of times where God is either hiding, or like you see like a ram is hidden in the bush, or just all these different things where God hides you or hides himself until you're ready to be confronted with you or with him. And so I'm not 100% sure. I know that ministry is a part of it, but I don't know what exactly that looks like.
I think it's such a beautiful thing that you really embody the principles in which that you share with the world. From Ready to Mingle, from, your podcast, from everything that you're doing is in alignment. You're allowing, you had to check your baggage before you actually dropped the baggage check podcast. You had to get ready to mingle before you actually drop the book. And I think that's a testament of your integrity and your core values and your ethics. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And anybody listening right now, you may be working on a book. You may be thinking that your story is significant, and it is. And we definitely want you to be able to write that book and unpack so that you can be impactful. But the first step to any of that is authenticity. It's transparency, it's vulnerability. And I think there's been times even in my life where I portrayed something online and I was in pain behind. And until I was able to authentically be who I was in all spaces, not just on camera, then I was able to actually achieve a higher level of purpose and fulfillment and joy and gratitude, because I felt like I didn't have to be two people in two different arenas. Can you just leave us with one last message of that person that is struggling, Kiana? That person that just got out of a tough relationship, that person that is in currently a relationship that is no longer suited for them, or even that person that doesn't believe in themselves in regards to their story. What would you say to that person?
First, I want everyone to understand that the pain that you experience, the situations that you experience, they're not for you. The gifts that you have, they're not for you. They were given to you. These are things that happen to you. And that is not to discredit your experiences, but they're not for you. You're going to do yourself and the world a disservice to not figure out what's being missed. And if you're focused on right now that, I'm feeling like I'm not good enough, I'm feeling like I can't find a way out of that, those feelings tell me that you haven't figured out the lesson. And so the quickest way out of your circumstance is to figure out the lesson. Just like the quickest way to pass 9th grade and like move on to 10th grade is to figure out the lessons, master the lessons, pass the tests, and then you get promoted to the next grade. So life is a lot like that. And I want you to understand that you don't have to prove your worth to anybody. The fact that you were created in God's image is validation enough that you were formed and modeled after a perfect being. So you don't need to prove yourself to anybody. You don't need to audition for love. You don't need to audition even for the things that God has called you to do, because he has already seen you as fit and perfect enough for every opportunity that he has called you to pursue. So if you are in one of those situations and you're feeling like you don't know the way out, you don't know what to do next, I want you to surrender. I want you to call on God, because he's going to show you what you deserve. And then I want you to be tenacious enough and strong enough to believe him when he tells you what you deserve. And I don't want you to let anybody convince you otherwise, because they didn't model you. God did.
There it is. There it is. I think anybody listening, I believe this, that you have the keys. You have the gifts. You have the support, you have the strength, you have the resiliency, you have everything that you need right in front of you, right? Every single day when you look at in the mirror. But until you actually have faith and believe in something bigger than yourself and your situation and your current circumstance and your current feeling and even your current desire, it'll be challenging for you to experience what it feels like to achieve your destiny. We want you to achieve that. We want you to surrender to your season and learn the lesson. We want you to take time to actually become self-aware and become the person that God believes that you can be, even if you don't believe it. You're going to go through some mess. You're going to go through some tragedy. You're going to go through some controversy. But we don't want you to look at that as all negative, because that baggage that you learn is going to provide you with the experience, the education, and it's going to equip you with the armor so that you can be successful in every realm. That's the power of your story. That's the power of how you begin to believe in what it takes to magnify your voice and not just putting a magnifying glass to your problems. We want you to monetize your message. It's another episode on the Writers Game podcast featuring Kiana Williams, and we'll see you guys next episode.